Hi, this is Shane from Ozone Water Systems. We recently released a new software update for our Smart Series Ozone generators, version 2.7, and wanted to make a video to show you how to do the update if you choose to update your generator. If you've got any of our Smart Series generators, and this includes anything from a 10 gram an hour generator all up to 450 or even perhaps higher plasma block system, or with our Ozone Water Systems cells, anything from a single cell up to a 7 cell, use this same controller, so you be able to take advantage of this update. So I want to make a video, show you how to get the files that you need to update it, put them on a USB stick, and then get them transferred onto the PLC to get your update done. So let's get started. So first thing you're going to need is a USB stick. I happen to have a little Kingston here, 2 gigabyte. It doesn't need to be that big. The files are pretty small. Whatever you pick up, you could potentially just keep using that. After you do the update, you're going to need to leave a USB stick installed. You will have to remove the update files before you start using it as a memory backup, because every time you insert this, it's going to automatically try to enter the file update prompt. So. But we'll get into that in a bit. But anyway, select a USB stick. I just happen to use this 2 gigabyte. The one that we include with our new generators is only like a 256 megabyte USB stick. So it doesn't, and even that one, it's only taken up a tiny little file. So get a USB stick, and you're going to insert that into your laptop. I'm first going to demonstrate this on a Windows machine, which I think is probably going to be the most common, and I'll also show you how to do it on a Mac to get it onto the USB stick, and also make sure that it's formatted in the right format. So on my this is a Windows 11 operating system, and on the left here, this is the file that we're going to send you. It's just a zip file. Over here on the right, I've got my USB stick selected. You do want to make sure that it's formatted in the correct format. So on Windows, you can right-click on the actual drive for the USB stick. Now, be cautious. Don't do this to your your main hard drive, your C drive, any of that. Make sure you've selected your USB stick, and then click on Format. So you right-click, then click Format. You don't need to format it unless it's incorrectly formatted to begin with. But what you need to have is either a FAT or FAT32 are the two best file systems to use if you're going to format your drive. Make sure it's not NTFS or EXFAT, or there's some other ones that you might run into if you're using a Mac. We'll discuss that when we're talking about the Mac. So make sure it's FAT or FAT32, and then it'll be compatible. So we'll email you this file, and really all you need to do is right-click on this from within Windows, and then you're going to click Extract All. And from here, you can just extract these to any directory and then move the files, but probably the quickest way, I think, to do it is to just go in and select the actual drive. So we're going to select the E drive. We're going to select that folder. So it's going to take the files that are in that zip file, and it's going to extract them directly to the root of the USB stick. It's important that they are in the root. You can't bury these within a folder, or the PLC won't be able to find them. So we're going to put this direct. In my case, it's the E drive. In your case, it's going to be something different, most likely. And then click Extract. And you see it over here now on my USB stick, I've got the two files that I need. There's an initialization file that pops up when you plug the USB stick into the PLC, and then this is the actual update file that it'll transfer to the PLC. Technically, on newer systems, newer operating systems, you don't need to do the eject, but I prefer to still do it. So close the window that's actually viewing the files on the USB stick, then right-click on the actual USB and click eject. I like to do it even though it's not 100% necessary, because if the drive is still doing something, it'll give you a warning not to pull it out just yet. Because even though it doesn't necessarily corrupt like it used to, if you pull it out while it's still transferring some files, you can definitely corrupt the files that you're putting on there. So I'll click eject. Now I can remove that drive and take it to my PLC. Alright, so now I'm on a Mac. If you have a Mac, this is your procedures for that, if you need them. I mean, if you don't need it, you can skip all this part. So the important thing on a Mac is to make sure that it's formatted correctly. There's a number of ways to get into here. I'm just going to do it the way I know how to do it. Go into your utilities, and then you're going to click on the disk utility, and you should see your USB drive on the list over here on the left. So you click on that, and then if you click erase, it's not going to immediately erase it, you'll get another prompt, but that brings up the formatting section. So on here you can tell what the format is for that drive. Obviously it's a FAT32 because I just formatted this same drive with my Windows machine, but you can see if you install that drive and it's been used on your Mac before, it may be formatted as a Mac OS file system, and that will not work on the PLC. So if you see that this is formatted in a different different type, then you need to go in here and select MS-DOS and then click on the erase button, and it'll reformat that in the proper format so that you can so that the PLC will recognize it. Now, once you're sure that the USB drive is formatted correctly, you can come over. Here's your zip file that we emailed you. You just double click on that. It'll extract the files into a folder, and then from there you can open that up. So to select all the files, I'll click the first one, then I'll hold my shift button down and click the second file, and then I'm just going to drag those files over to my USB, and it'll copy those files onto your USB stick. So now that I've got those files on my USB, again, like in the Windows machine, you want to make sure that you eject that properly. Just right click on it, and then you'll have an eject option so that you can get it out without corrupting the files. Alright, now that you've got your USB stick prepared, you want to go back to the Ozone generator, and before you do any updating, you want to capture, if you haven't already done this, you want to make sure you capture all of your settings so that you can plug these back in. In some cases, if your firmware is older on your PLC, when you do this update, it's also going to update the Eject firmware before it updates the program. If that happens, it is going to erase all the data registers, so you're going to have to plug these back in when you get done. So there's several areas where there's some things to record. Would go into your settings screens first. There's a ozone on delay, purge delay. If your system uses the PID functions, there's going to be a button up here for PID settings. So there could be a number of different things on this settings screen that you want to capture and record. Plus you're also going to see what your software version number is. This particular one has 2.5 on it, and we're going to update that. And you're also going to need to go into your factory screens, enter the password. Again, if you need that, you're going to need to contact our office to get the password for your particular generator. I showed you this in the last video, but you basically move the cursor around with these arrows and hit enter on the digit you want to enter. And once you've done entering all your digits, you move it down to OK and then hit enter, and then that will enter the password protected area. Once you're into the factory screens, you want to document all of these. You can take some pictures or write down these values. I like to use pictures myself, but you want to make sure that you capture all these values, the state of these buttons. So if you have, if these buttons are on or off, you need to know what setting is. If you have a feed gas monitor, you need to make sure that you document which one is selected. If it's off, oxygen or dew point, one of them will be selected. Then you proceed to the Factory 2 screen, do the same thing for all of these screens and document what these settings are. The Ozone runtime here, you're not going to be able to keep that if the data registers get erased in the process. So if you need to retain that value to know what your runtime is, write that number down, and then you'll just have to add it to whatever you see in the future when your runtime is recorded. So document all these values. Once you've documented that, take pictures, then you can proceed to do the update. On the back of your PLC, you're going to have a USB port. The top one here is a small one that's labeled USB 1. The larger one here is USB 2. That's the one you're going to use, obviously, because that's the only one where this will plug in. When you insert the USB stick, you're going to get a pop-up. Just hit the 2.7 update button. Now you are going to have to enter a password, and this is a different password than you use to enter the factory screen. So also on this password, when we send you the files, we'll have sent you the password to do this, and then you'll enter that password and to proceed with the update. So I've entered the password, and then I've navigated the cursor down to OK. Now I'm going to hit the OK button. It's going to stop the memory, and it's going to proceed to do the transfer. Just give it time. Depending on if yours needs the firmware update or not, it will change the amount of time it takes to do this. But just don't interrupt it. Let it finish what it's doing. All right, when the update is completed, you'll get a acknowledgement screen. It'll say that the update has been completed. And then before you hit the acknowledge button, we're going to go ahead and remove the USB stick. So we'll pull the USB stick out. If you don't pull the USB stick out and you do the acknowledge button, when the PLC reboots, it'll take you back into that update screen. So now we'll hit the acknowledge button. PLC will reboot. Now, if you go right back to the menu screen, that means that the data registers did not get cleared on yours. If it did the firmware update, you may have lost your settings. If the registers did get deleted, it's going to take you directly to this memory manager screen. You know, in the red X, like I showed you in the previous video, going over the updates, this indicates that you have lost your data register settings. So at this point, you don't have anything to recover it from because you haven't yet saved your data registers. So go back into, click on your menu, and you're going to have to unfortunately manually enter this. So go back into your factory screen, enter the password, and then once you're in your factory screens, you're going to see here that your values are at 0. So if it cleared your data registers. So go through, re-enter everything as it was in your previous one. There is going to be a couple of new selections, of course, because this is the new version. So there's like, this didn't exist on your previous version. But go through each factory screen and plug in all the values as they were before. Now you do now have that memory manager option. So what I would suggest you do is take that USB stick that you just used for the update, put it back in your PC, and just delete those 2 files that we transferred to it. Once you delete those 2 files, put it back in to the back of the PLC. Then you can go back into the controller, go back into your factory screen, navigate through all your factory buttons, get all the way to factory screen number 5, and then hit the memory manager button. What you're going to want to do once you have all those values entered, you're going to hit the backup button, and then it's going to store all those values to your new memory stick. And then from here on out, if you ever have an issue with the memory, you can just come in back into this screen if you need to, and then hit the recover button, and it'll bring those values back off your USB stick and populate everything, and you'll get the OK. Now in the future, if you do want to pull that USB stick out, I have never had it do any harm pulling it directly out, but if you want to be cautious, you can go into your settings screen, click on set clock, and there's a button here for a USB eject. That just, if you pull the USB stick out without doing this, it'll just give you a prompt. It'll get mad at you and tell you that you need to stop the USB before you pull it out. But if you come into this screen and click that button, it turns green to indicate that it's safe to pull the USB stick out. Now I can pull the USB stick out and I don't get the error message. Button stays green until you plug it back in. Once you plug the USB stick back in, the button turns back to blue, indicating that it's now reading off the USB stick. If you push that button and you didn't mean to pull the USB stick out, and that light stays green, it will not read from the USB stick. So you do need to pull the stick out and then put it back in order to reset it so that it'll start reading off that USB stick out. Because if you try to do a backup or something when that is green, it's not reading from the USB stick. If you want to do backup or restore, it won't work because it's not reading off of that anymore. So make sure you unplug it and plug it back in so that is not green. But that's your procedure. Now from here on out, you want to leave that new USB stick, plug it in, because that's your memory. If you do want to pull that out, do the eject feature, take that back to your laptop or your PC and put that file, save it in a safe place. Do not change the name of the file, because if you do, then it's not gonna, the PLC won't be able to read it. So if you back it up onto your hard drive, just put it in a folder that's named for whichever generator you pulled that from, so you know which one it is, but without renaming the file. Any questions, please contact our office. But the procedure is pretty straightforward, and I hope you enjoy your new updates.